Hello.
Greetings and salutations, my beautiful people, and welcome back to Caddy's Retrospectives. Oh, I think the title card's a little bit broken there. Let me fix that. Just give me a second. There we go. Greetings and salutations, my beautiful people, and welcome back to Caddy's Retrospectives. Good enough. Anyway, hello everybody, and we've now reached the final part of my little mini Oddworld mini retrospective mini. And technically this should have just been part 2 to the whole thing, but then if it was part 2, part 3 wouldn't have been able to exist, so shut up. I've already explained this in part 2, the last video of part 2 to the part 3. And this part is dedicated to the very 50-50 split, fan-favorited and fan-hated installment to Oddworld, Munch's Odyssey. So let's stop digressing and just get on with the video, starting soon. So where were we? We had the legendary Limitless Luscious Lawn Landing, Cherry McKenna and him starting on with Inhabitants, 2 artistically mind-blowing and massively ahead of their time puzzle action cinematic platformers that I completely adore, combined total sales of over 4 million units, and then all of this accumulated to an unintentionally planned gaming icon for the PS1. Alongside Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, Abe became a worldwide legend and went from an obscure cult protagonist into an unofficial PlayStation mascot, as well as being one of the most unconventional, goofy, and yet completely lovable gaming schmucks of all time. And you know, not like this bastard. Yeah, there were some slicker PC versions made as well, but the main thread pulling Abe along was Oddworld's fantastic relationship between them and Sony. And then in the autumn season between 1999 and 2000, Oddworld then announced their next big project, to be released in North America on November 15th, 2001, which was to be made exclusively for the Microsoft Xbox. And then they dropped the real atom bomb by stating that every sequential Oddworld game would be Microsoft only on their line of Xbox consoles, which left fans in complete dismay. Why would Oddworld do this exactly? Why would this apparent misdirection of the fans, some of whom had bought the PS2 alone for a potential Oddworld game, be executed? Well, that's because Lanning stated in the very early 2000s that the Xbox was the content machine that any creative minds could build much more spectacular and massive games from. Obviously, this statement is now something that I think the legendary Limitless Luscious Lawn Lanning would not like to be quoted on after the Stranger's Wrath scandal, but we're not talking about that, are we? So anyway, with the questionable exclusivity aside, what did the next generation of gaming have for the inhabitants? Well, how about turning this 3D? Yes, please. I need this. All over me. In my face. As a kid, I honestly only asked for the Xbox solely because I heard Oddworld had moved on to it. They sold the Xbox to me. And being that the Xbox was more powerful at the time than the PS2, the prospect of a next-gen Oddworld game being made to the full, highest possible specs of that time would have been the best thing I've ever seen in my life, and in my eyes, worth the price of the console alone. The concept was there, the system was there, the team was there, all the stars were aligned, and the planets, and everything was all set and ready to go and blow our minds. But honestly, where as a kid I loved this game, replaying it for this video made me realise that, in my opinion, this is where actually Oddworld seemed to get a little bit confused. But we'll divulge more about that later, because where the gameplay and the 3D aspect of this entire game is the more interesting thing to talk about, we have to get on with the thing that Oddworld never screws around with, and that is the story. So yeah, being that this was the second part of the Oddworld quintology, the focus had shifted from good old Abe and onto this lovely thing. And his name was Munch. Munch was a gabbit, a species on Oddworld that were commercially fished for experiments and meat. And unfortunately, they were all fished to near extinction, leading to one of the saddest things you'll ever see in gaming history.
Now, I can't find anybody.
Then one day, when Munch was searching for other gabbits using echolocation, he hears what he assumes to be another gabbit, which then turns out to be a trap set by the Vikers, who are fucking gross. I love them. They then take Munch to the floating death machine fortress known as Viker's Labs, and implant a sonar radar majigger into Munch's head so that he could go and grab every trapped creature set by the Vikers without them ever having to leave the labs. However, Munch begins communication with other trapped creatures called Fuzzles in little cages right next to him, and because of his sonar radar majigger, he frees them, himself, and then attempts to escape. At the same time though, Abe was still on the scene and was given a quest by the almighty Raisin. That's what he's actually called. Who then tells Abe and his buddies to save Munch from Vickers Labs, because as a team, they could work together to rescue a huge stockpile of Mudokon eggs from there, as well as possibly grab the last known can of Gabiar, which are Gabbit eggs, which were being held up for auction on the floating base as well. Doing this, though, involved an epic quest through all of the native Mudokon fortresses, open greens, and Glukkon business divisions, such as breeding huts and meat processors, in order to possess the executive Glukkons and force them to donate to a homeless bum Glukkon called Lulu, who may actually be the key to accessing Vickers Labs, and therefore accessing the Mudokon egg chambers and finally the Gabiar auction.
Yeah, I know. And where both Abe games before it had similar plot structures and similar ideas and similar stories in general, throwing another character into the mix, Munch, allowed for a much more dynamic and interesting story that constantly threw curveballs and kept the situation that you were in interesting.
Fun fact. Did you know
that when Microsoft marketed the game, they wanted it to appeal to more casual gamers, and so proposed that the title be called Abe and Munch's Fun Adventures? These people had obviously never even looked at any fucking Oddworld game before.
Yep, the same consumerism and spiritual protection and psychological responsibility ideas are all there, and might I add, they're actually much funnier and smarter, more tongue-in-cheek, and more disgusting than ever before, acting almost as a twisted mirror to our real-world selves living as consumers.
And this is nothing new for Oddworld, but having... Hello?
So, how's Queen Elizabeth doing?
But having two protagonists weaving in and out of this quest opened up a lot of great possibilities. In one section of the game, you'll be doing one particular goal and thinking that it's beginning like a kind of linear and predictable route, and then all of a sudden, whoops! Pissed yourself.
But I do think that amongst the plot, the new designs for the characters were perfect. Look at those fucking Vikers. What madman conceptualized this monstrosity? When you get a next-gen system to make an Oddworld game, this is what you do. And I can see why they chose to build this from the Xbox. The inhabitants went all out to further expand the disturbing, brutal moneymakers and disturbing cute innocence to make you actually feel emotions for something that looked like this in the production stages. And even when Munch's design was finished, he was still pretty icky, but yet that intro strikes your heart in a way that I can't describe. The loneliness, the emptiness, the hopelessness, the seclusion in a vast space of what you used to call home. This idea was just terrifically sought out and executed from the second you booted up the game, and fair play, Oddworld. But this was also pushed along by the Xbox's bigger disk space and improved engines, allowing for the cutscenes to be more detailed, crisper with sounds and music, more fluently animated, and chock full of tons more stuff everywhere. I mean, look at these. They were so well molded and rendered that they became the cutscenes I'd remembered the most from my childhood. All these could be stuck on a DVD and I'd buy it out of stock! And this, of course, was backed up by the even funnier writing and smarter social commentary, as well as the more terrifyingly weird moments.
So yes, the cutscenes in Munch are a fantastically great start, and the intro is ingenious. It will envelop you from the second you boot up the game and pump you up ready for an epic experience with an epic game. But was the game as epic as we were promised? Well, let's start off with the presentation.
Now, this is where things, in my opinion, began to drop just a little bit. I'm not going to knock this game's visuals for a second, because for the Xbox, they're big, bold, well-detailed, and very good for the time. And I still stand to that today. Even the models look tip-top with great animations. But however, I felt as though most of the style from the last two games seemed to fizzle away a bit. In my opinion, there were no memorable areas that you explored, and most of them appeared a little too aesthetically similar, leading you to feel as though your journey was often going nowhere. There were no standout major atmospheric differences, and every environment, especially for Oddworld, looked rather generic. I mean, the lights and shadows and sun effects are really nice, but I don't know, I just never expected that turning this or this 3D would end up with the same basic textural planes and metallic watery factories. And I felt that the other unexplored corners of Oddworld could have been a little bit more defined and interesting. But you know, it's a completely different style of game, hence moving on to the gameplay.
Fun fact. Did you know
that there's actually not much trivia for this game anywhere on the internet? I'm not even joking, I've looked for hours. There's nothing.
Obviously, the major difference was the switch from Prince of Persia-esque action platforming and flashback-esque puzzle adventuring in a 2D cinematic style into a fully scoped and free-roaming 3D third-person deal. I like that they went with this direction myself, especially for the next gen. Sure, they could have taken a 2.5D Klonoa 2 route, but I honestly liked how they tried something different. Abe could explore mostly anywhere you wanted in all different directions, pick up and throw more things, including your own kind, to solve the 3D puzzles, and Abe's possession came back but was changed pretty steeply. By collecting spruce shrubs, also used to unlock doors, Abe could charge his possession, represented by a ball, which could then travel around and possess anything that it touched. The more shrubs you used, the longer the ball lasted. And again, I liked that approach. And it also meant you couldn't use it willy-nilly, as you could be attacked by almost anything around you at any time, and not just by something on the same screen as you, which in turn increased the puzzling stealth survival aspect. But the main step up in gameplay was the ability to switch between Munch and Abe, both of whom had much different approaches to the game and abilities for certain situations. This approach rocked. Munch is swimming to Abe's lifting, Munch is talking to Fuzzles to Abe's talking to Mudokons, and Munch's ultra-fast wheelchair power-up to Abe's platforming skills. Munch could also manipulate different machines and heavily attack others with a zapping radar vending machine power-up. But being more of an aquatic animal than a land animal, he couldn't run fast or jump high. Abe could also use the vending machine power-ups, allowing for ultra-fast running speeds and high jumping. And of course, he could possess shit, but at the same time, he couldn't swim or attack anyone hard himself. Like I said, both had their distinctive places in the game and added fantastic 3D puzzling elements to Oddworld. GameSpeak also returned, but with a twist. You had a fight command. Everyone now, including you, had a health meter as opposed to one-hit kill deaths. And by talking to the army of Mudokons or Fuzzles following you, you could ask them to attack predators, sligs, and vikers, which actually inputted a lot more strategy into protecting the ones you're trying to rescue, as well as progress yourself and make sure that you and all of your buddies do not die in battle. I mean, how much would I love to upgrade native Mudokons with staffs and guns, all with hilarious battle cries? Very much so.
But unfortunately, different didn't necessarily mean fantastic. And honestly, if you ask me, this gameplay had some huge flaws completely stapled to it, which I found really hard to shake off.
Whether or not these pet peeves were caused by the 3D aspect remains to be said, but still, they annoyed me. Firstly, the GameSpeak was there, but the GameSpeak puzzles had vanished, even with talking to other enemies. There were some really nice touches and funny dialogues you could uncover, but it was never ever needed, and none of the puzzles required it to be solved. Puzzles that involved picking up and throwing bombs, crates, and other Mudokons were heavily abused and quite boring, meaning tons of backtracking to pick up and throw things over and to the same damn place, one at a time. Yeah, there was a lot more freedom with both exploring Oddworld and approaching the puzzles, granted, and especially with how you possess your enemies and where you can possess them from, but that could be very easily exploited, leading players to simply possess and kill every enemy or creature until it was free to pass. It may have been very time consuming, but seriously, it was really easy to bypass and it didn't require any thought or skill. One of my favorite aspects from the last games, stealth, sneaking, and suspense, were completely taken away for more head-on action, making the impact of scraps, paramites, slogs, sligs, and everything completely dampened. Nothing was a major threat anymore, and there was a much bigger plane to escape, and if you couldn't escape, well, you could just keep on running because you had a health meter. Where one enemy could make your palms sweat in the last two games, here all of the enemies, including the wildlife, just felt like complete cardboard. They didn't do much damage to you, there were too many of them, so the impact of them was completely lost. Nothing was scary anymore, and it all just felt a little overdone to a point of you feeling constant safety. And for something that looks like this chasing you around, it shouldn't have been there. Not to mention, yeah, there were more enemies, but having very similar puzzles in very similar looking locations with nothing more than stronger enemies in different places meant that the whole game sometimes felt like you were just playing slightly harder replicas of everything you already did. It sometimes just felt really damn repetitive, and that's the key word, repetition. For a company famous for creating such fleshed out worlds to the point of moving canvas painting standards, repetition should not be a word I'm saying right now. But unfortunately, I have to say it because you could solve the puzzles in the same repetitive ways. For example, if you get up safe and possess a slig to attack all the others below you and then die, you could just possess the next available slig and repeat the same process until they're all dead. If your native Mudokons fell in battle, but not the slaves, you could just resurrect them and try everything again. If one of Munch's machines broke down, you simply started another one straight away without even moving. It's stuff that I never thought, even with a 3D plane, Oddworld would have done, especially when compared to the tenseness and raw difficulty of the last two games.
However, when it did do a 3D free-roaming Oddworld right, it did it bang on, and it made you forget about all these flaws even for just a second, to an extent.
And despite everything I didn't personally enjoy so much though, it's still not a bad game, and it turned Munch into another icon as well as winning many awards for direction, story, and visuals. But unfortunately, it didn't sell as well as the previous games with 0.73 million copies sold as of today. Still good though, and the multiple endings for this game depending on the number of Mudokons and Fuzzles you saved are equally as entertaining, gorgeously animated, twisted, and darkly hilarious, which I won't spoil for you now because trust me, it's worth playing the game alone just for them. This game's good ending is in a list for my top favorite game endings of all time for absolute definite.
Fun fact: Did you know?
That there's actually a third ending to this game for saving every Mudokon and Fuzzle, unlike the last two games. It's the same as the normal good ending, yet the newspaper tile at the very end is changed to explain how collapsed and destroyed the entirety of Gluckons and Vikers end up, due to no slaves or test subjects. Worth it, I suppose.
But does Oddworld Munch's Odyssey hold up today? Well, kinda, sorta. Nowadays, the whole thing just feels a little bit dated, especially for an Oddworld game. Is it worth picking up, though? Yeah, I'd say so. If you're a fan of Oddworld and haven't had a chance to look at this, I would say have a look at it, if not for the cutscenes alone. And also, if you've been playing the Oddworld games as I've been making these videos and talking about them, then you may actually end up enjoying this. Some of you might not, some of you might. But if you end up being a fan of the Oddworld series after playing them as I've been talking about them, you might actually really like this as much as I did when I first played it. You just gotta keep in mind that it's not nearly as good as the last two entries.
And what was to become of Oddworld after these three games? Well, for starters, we got, debatably, the best Xbox exclusive game ever made, Oddworld Stranger's Wrath. And the fate of that game's marketing, sales, and treatment from EA and Microsoft towards Oddworld inhabitants is just fucking awful. All I can say, EA, is that you missed out on a fucking incredible game, and if you beautiful people want to learn more about this, there are plenty of conspiracy theories, discussions, and interviews with the legendary Limitless Lon Lanning as to exactly what happened, and why all of the other Oddworld games and HD remakes have not been released anywhere near the Xbox 360 or Xbox One. And good on them, I say. I can't honestly blame them.
I also did a video on it and you can watch it here.
And like I said earlier, linking up with Just Add Water, an awesome British game development team, all of the Oddworld installments so far have seen HD remasters for PC, PS3 and PS Vita. And on Steam and the PS Store you can get Abe's Odyssey, Abe's Exodus, Munch's Odyssey HD and Stranger's Wrath HD in the Oddbox bundle, which, believe you me, is fucking incredible! And amazingly priced, especially for some of the greatest games ever made. Oh, and there were some music videos with techno dance artists. But actually, looking at the bigger picture, not too much has solidly happened other than the HD remakes and one new installment since Munch. But out of that little that has happened, great things are in store. There's an Abe's Odyssey reimagining called New and Tasty, set to be out on the PS4, PS3, Wii U, PS Vita and PC very soon. And it looks unbelievable and I'm so excited. Not to mention, we have a brief idea about tons of planned Oddworld titles such as The Hand of Odd, Slickstorm, The Brutal Ballad of Fangus Klotz, Squeak's Odyssey, Munch's Exodus, Slave Circus and even Stranger's Wrath 2, all covering multiple game genres and formats. Not to mention, Lanning has even spoken about a movie he's working on with two other games tied in under the title Citizen Siege. So you know what? I'm seriously willing to wait. Quality over quantity any day.
And if I had to pick my favourite out of the three, I'd easily pick Abe's Exodus. Yeah, you knew I was going to say that.
Munch wasn't bad, Abe's Odyssey was great, but the scale, depth, and just everything with Exodus made it my favourite without even thinking. I won't ramble now because I've already done that in part 2. Suffice to say, Oddworld, I adore you, and always will do with every crazy, disturbing, and creative game you put out onto the market. Now, let's not end this video on a fart joke. Damn it! Hello everybody and thanks very much for sticking through my mini Oddworld retrospective. If you enjoyed this video then please don't forget to hit that little like button, and if you enjoyed me, I don't know why you would, but if you did enjoy me then please don't forget to hit that little subscribe button because then you'll keep up to date with everything that I do. If you like this style of video series that I do then I've linked you 2 playlists on this screen now to 2 different retrospectives. And if you weren't a fan of it so much, well then you can just click on my channel and see what else I do because I don't only do this. Thanks again for everything guys, and if it's your birthday today watching this video then happy frickin' birthday to you, and please remember to stay beautiful. Take care everyone, farewell, and I'll see you all next time.